victory, dog. I'm here to tell you the owners is fed up. They just did an emergency Zoom meeting with 50 players, and they let it be known. It's either y'all signed by March 10th or we're not upholding the 2026 schedule. Y'all, the owners is getting tired. I told you.
March 10th. That's the deadline. 2 weeks from tomorrow. And if the WNBA Players Association doesn't have a signed term sheet on the table, the entire 2025 season schedule gets thrown out. We're talking about a league that just experienced its most successful year in history, now staring down the barrel of a potential work stoppage. And after 16 months of negotiations, over 50 players just got called into an emergency virtual meeting with team owners. The message was clear: we're done playing games.
About, because this is what just happened. The WNBA told the WBPA and its teams today that a term sheet for a new CBA out to be completed by when? March the 10th, for the 2026 schedule to not be impacted. That's 2 weeks from tomorrow. Oh yes. 2 weeks from tomorrow. Y'all got two.
Alexa Philippou from ESPN broke this story 7 minutes after that Zoom call ended. The league's Labor Relations Committee didn't just send a memo. They brought in the owners. They brought in over 50 players, bypassing the union leadership entirely. That's not standard negotiation protocol. That's ownership saying we need to talk to the actual players, not the people claiming to represent them. And when you've got a meeting that lasts nearly 2 hours on a virtual call with that many people, you know the temperature in that room was volcanic.
We've been dealing with this for 16 months, nearly 2 years, bro, with the CBA negotiation. 2 years. Look, bro, if the owner's tired, we tired, how the players not tired? How's y'all not tired? Just sign the damn paper. Y'all finna get some money, because if this was about bigger contracts, y'all would have signed already, because y'all already got the bigger contract.
Here's what makes this particularly insane. The WNBA just secured an average of $8 million per team from their new media rights deal. That's transformational money for a league that's been operating in the red for most of its existence. Player salaries are about to jump significantly. The maximum contract is going from $241,000 to over $1 million. The salary cap per team is jumping to somewhere between $5 and $6 million. These are massive wins for the players, and yet we're still stuck in this negotiation limbo because of one issue: revenue sharing percentages.
Baby, Caitlin Clark is. Now, it goes on to say the WPA leadership will meet to discuss next steps, including a response to WBPA's proposal for Friday. Now, this was her replying back to her first tweet. One person said, it's a win for the owners to meet with 50 players rather than the tool bags who are leaders for the players union, because the 50 players are the players that's trying to get the deal done. The league only got like 141 after players.
Let's talk about what's actually on the table, because the numbers matter here. The union initially asked for 30% of gross revenue. They've now walked that back to 27.5%, starting at 25% in year one of the new CBA. The league's latest counteroffer is 70% of net revenue, with no trigger threshold required. Now, if you don't speak CBA negotiation language, here's what that means. Gross revenue is everything that comes in the door before expenses. Net revenue is what's left after you pay for arenas, travel, staff, production costs, everything. The difference between those two numbers is enormous. The league is also offering guaranteed housing for players, which has been a major sticking point for years. We're talking about professional athletes who've had to scramble for Airbnbs during the season or live in team-provided apartments that weren't exactly 4-star accommodations. That's changing, but apparently it's not changing fast enough or comprehensively enough for the union leadership.
How is we still far apart when this has been going on since 16 months from today? The person that spoke with the AP on condition of an enemy because of the sensitive nature of the negotiation, it was the first meeting between the two sides that involved players and the league since they met at the WNBA office on February 2nd. Because of the winter storm that hit New York, it was decided to hold the virtual meeting, right? Over 50 players were on the call, which lasted nearly 2 hours. The person said the two sides are still apart on revenue sharing.
Now here's where this gets complicated and why that emergency meeting happened. The two sides are still far apart on revenue sharing and housing specifics. But when you dig into who's actually holding up these negotiations, a pattern emerges. This isn't about the young stars who just watched Caitlin Clark sell out arenas and generate massive television ratings. This isn't about the players who are about to benefit most from the explosion in popularity the league just experienced. This is about the veteran players, the ones who've been in the league for a decade or more, trying to maximize their last opportunity to cash in on a CBA negotiation. And look, I understand that perspective. If you've been grinding in this league since 2010, playing overseas every winter just to make a livable income, watching the NBA players get 50% of basketball-related income while you're fighting for scraps, you want your piece of this new money. But there's a difference between wanting your fair share and holding the entire league hostage while the best opportunity in WNBA history is sitting right there on the table.
And housing. The league is in its latest proposal that was sent Friday, offer 70% net revenue for the players, and said it will do away with the trigger threshold that currently needs to be met to attain revenue sharing. That came after the union asked for 27.5% of gross revenue. Bro, and then beginning with 25% in the first year of the new CBA deal, its previous offer, the union had asked for 30%. So like I told y'all earlier, they went down to 27. My idea is somewhere between 15 to 18. If they could fall somewhere between 15 to 18% of revenue sharing, they just might get it. But they're asking for too much. Y'all got 2 weeks. Figure it out.
The league's position is actually pretty reasonable when you break it down. They're offering 70% of net revenue. In the NBA, players get roughly 50% of basketball-related income, but the NBA is profitable. The WNBA, according to every financial report that's ever been published, has never turned a profit. The league has been subsidized by the NBA for its entire 28-year existence. So when the league says we'll give you 70% of net revenue, they're essentially saying once we actually make money, you get the majority of it. But the union wants gross revenue sharing. They want 27.5% of everything that comes in, regardless of whether the league is profitable. And mathematically, depending on how expenses shake out, that could actually be more money than the league is offering. But it also could bankrupt teams if revenue doesn't grow as projected. This is the fundamental disagreement that's kept these negotiations going for 16 months.
So I'm going to keep bringing you out this news as long as it keep coming out. And I'm going to keep it real, man. It's these old hacks holding up the line. Down in the comment section, let me know y'all thoughts about this. Make sure y'all keep them bells on. I will be back with more content. Till next time.
So why the emergency meeting? Why now? Because the league has to finalize the 2025 schedule, and they can't do that without knowing the CBA structure. Travel arrangements, arena bookings, broadcast commitments, all of that requires lead time. And if the players don't sign by March 10th, the league isn't bluffing about scrapping the schedule. They'll have to. The logistics don't work otherwise. But here's the real pressure point that nobody's talking about publicly. Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever rookie, just had the most impactful debut season in WNBA history. She averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists. She led the Fever to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. More importantly, she generated television ratings that the league has never seen. Games featuring Clark averaged over 1 million viewers. Her playoff debut drew 1.8 million viewers on ESPN. Those are numbers that rival NBA playoff games.
They don't want to see Caitlin Clark come back. I just got to be honest. Because if y'all wanted to see Caitlin Clark come back, and y'all want to see box office numbers coming for the Fever, and y'all want all these revenues done, because Caitlin Clark just got y'all $8 million per damn team. Y'all really think y'all selling jerseys, selling merch to get y'all $8 million? No, y'all ain't selling like that. Asia Wilson ain't popping like that. Sabrina ain't either. Y'all want to know how y'all just got that $8 million? Caitlin Clark is how y'all got the $8 million.
Here's what makes this situation so frustrating for fans and for the league. Caitlin Clark is the reason the WNBA just signed that massive media rights deal. She's the reason teams are getting $8 million each. She's the reason jersey sales exploded. She's the reason casual sports fans who've never watched a WNBA game suddenly tuned in. And if this CBA negotiation drags on and threatens the 2025 season, you risk losing all that momentum. Clark's not going anywhere. She's under contract. But the cultural moment, the mainstream attention, the casual fans who just discovered the league, that's fragile. You can't tell America, hey, we've got this incredible young star you need to watch, and then follow it up with, actually, we might not have a season because we can't agree on revenue percentages. That's how you kill momentum. That's how you go from SportsCenter highlights back to niche coverage. And the veteran players who are holding out for a better deal, they have to understand this. A'ja Wilson is incredible. Breanna Stewart is a generational talent. Sabrina Ionescu is must-watch television. But none of them moved the needle the way Clark did. That's not a knock on their talent. It's just the reality of mainstream sports popularity. Clark connected with an audience that the WNBA has been trying to reach for 28 years. So when you've got that kind of star power, when you've got that kind of cultural momentum, when you've got networks willing to pay real money for broadcast rights, you don't jeopardize it over the difference between net revenue and gross revenue percentages. You take the massive win that's on the table, you play the season, you build on the momentum, and you negotiate again in 3 or 4 years when you have even more leverage. But that's not what's happening. Instead, we've got 16 months of back and forth. We've got emergency Zoom calls with 50 players, we've got a March 10th deadline that's barreling toward us like a freight train, and we've got union leadership that seems more interested in winning the negotiation than in recognizing the unprecedented opportunity sitting right in front of them. The league offered to eliminate the trigger threshold for revenue sharing. That's huge. Previously, the league had to hit certain revenue benchmarks before players got their percentage. Now they're saying no threshold. You get your cut from $1. That's a massive concession. The league also bumped up the salary cap significantly. They addressed housing. They addressed travel conditions. They've given ground on almost every major issue. But it's not enough, because the union leadership is stuck on this principle of gross revenue sharing. And I get it. Principles matter, but so does pragmatism. So does recognizing when you've won most of the battle and it's time to sign the deal and move forward. The owners are tired. That's what this emergency meeting was really about. They're tired of negotiating. They're tired of the delays. They're tired of the uncertainty. And they're sending a message, signed by March 10th, or we're prepared to deal with the consequences of not having a season. That's not a bluff. That's ownership, saying we've been more than reasonable. We've put a strong offer on the table, and if you don't take it, that's on you. And here's the thing about the players who were on that call, the 50+ who showed up for that 2-hour virtual meeting. A lot of them just want to play. They want the season to happen. They want to capitalize on the momentum from last year. They're not the ones holding this up. It's the union leadership, the veteran voices who have the most influence in these negotiations, who are drawing the line in the sand over revenue percentages. So where does this go from here? The union leadership is meeting to discuss their response. They've got until Friday to counter the league's latest proposal. And then we're looking at a very tight timeline to get something finalized by March 10th. Can it happen? Sure. Will it happen? That depends on whether the union is willing to compromise on gross versus net revenue. My prediction? They'll get a deal done. The pressure is too intense, the stakes are too high, and the risk of losing an entire season of Caitlin Clark's prime is too significant. But it's going to come down to the wire. And it's going to require the union leadership to accept that 70% of net revenue, plus all the other improvements in the deal, is actually a massive victory for the players. Because here's the reality, if the WNBA becomes consistently profitable over the next few years, 70% of net revenue could end up being more money than 27.5% of gross revenue. It all depends on how the business grows. And with Clark, Wilson, Stewart, and the next generation of stars driving interest, there's every reason to believe the league's financial picture is about to improve dramatically. So take the deal, sign by March 10th, play the season, build on last year's momentum, and then, in 3 or 4 years when the next CBA negotiation comes around, you'll have even more leverage, because the league will be in an even stronger position. That's the smart play, that's the strategic move, and hopefully that's what happens over the next 2 weeks. Because the alternative, losing a season over percentage points in a revenue-sharing formula, would be an absolute disaster for everyone involved.